Hello and welcome to this very special discussion on the much awaited Fortune 500 India special issue. Now this issue is now on stands and waiting for you to read it. The Fortune 500 India is the compendium, the ultimate compendium of India's largest companies. Having said that, I have with me here the executive editor of Fortune India, V. Keshavdev. He's the guy who's actually put everything together. He's the guy who brings out this much awaited annual listing of India's largest. Welcome to the show, Keshav.
Thank you, Saurav. Thank you.
So, Keshav, let's start off right away by asking you what exactly is the background. I want you to give us the background of what the Fortune 500 India this year has been brought out against, in the sense that what is the economic environment under which we see this listing?
I think that's a very incisive question that you asked, Saurav. We all know that economic growth has been really challenging, especially the Q2 numbers have really shown that growth has come off. But since our listing is all about FY24, the numbers that have shown in terms of corporate profitability and in terms of top line growth, there is a slight element of tapering which is reflective of what has happened in FY25. So FY24 kind of showed you the growth pangs in that sense that India Inc. has faced. But what is unique about this 15th year of Fortune 500 is that the profit to GDP ratio, which is a very important marker of profitability, is at a 13-year high, and we are 15 years into that. So, and that's a record high profitability that Indian companies have shown against a very average single-digit top-line growth. So that just goes to show that that commodity prices has also helped. The other aspect of it is that there has also been operational efficiencies that companies have brought into their businesses, which has helped in better margins. So, in that sense, this year's Fortune 500 is a standout, and we might see an falling off of the peak.
But in fact, it's good you mentioned record highs, because there are other records also which the FY24 Fortune 500 India has shown and broken records this year. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of records, this year has been a series of records have been broken. But the one thing, pertinent record that I would like to bring forth is that it's like an icing on the cake. 283 companies have crossed $1 billion in revenues. That's total income, and they command a cumulative 1.7 trillion, and that's a record high that we have ever seen. And to like an icing on the cake is that you have 37 companies who are generating $1 billion in profits, and they cumulatively command 107 billion, and that's like a phenomenal achievement in the past 15 years since we started this listing of Fortune 500.
No, the other important point which you mentioned is the balance sheet cleanup, operational efficiencies. Even in the face of a very choppy global economic environment, we've written, I wrote in my edit in this issue that, the point was that navigating the known unknowns. Now, the known unknowns are all there right in front of us, right? And how did the corner rooms navigate that is a lesson which many of the stories and many of the figures which you put out in this issue will actually generate and tell us. Tell us what, from your perspective, as the person who's dug in all the numbers, what do you think has really worked last year for India Inc.?
Like I said, the biggest thing has been, the cumulative profit pool. When you talk about that, and why I'm emphasizing profit pool is because that's at a record high, and that has largely come, driven by better margins, and commodity costs have also gone up. So all the guys who are producers have been able to deliver far more better numbers on that sense. So in that sense, I would say that the operational efficiency has been a big driver of growth in terms of profitability for all of these companies, and that has really shown up in FY24, because the top line growth on a cumulative basis has been very single digit.
But
it's profit that has really gone up.
Let's come to a few areas of concern. we've talked about the consumption conundrum in the middle class, particularly the CEOs of some FMCG companies have raised this concern. Now, as you pointed out in the beginning, that the Q2 growth has also come at a very disturbing level compared to the way we were chugging along. What do you think are the concerns which now in FY25, like that was a kind of a warning signal in the way towards the end, but what this year is going to be really challenging. So what do you see if I were to bring a crystal ball and tell you FY25, Keshav, tell us what exactly do you think this list will look like? What do you say?
With some amount of, I would say cockiness, I would say that the 500 number will stay for sure. But and the top 10 will remain the top 10, and that's one interesting aspect that I wanted to highlight is among the top 5, Reliance is the only private sector company, and the rest 4 are all PSUs.
That's something. That's a very important observation.
And it is from 2020, it has continued except for a year in 2021.
And this year, I think State Bank of India also gets into the top 5. Right?
In the top 5.
And LIC
by default, by its size, post its IPO, has now taken the number 2 spot. But Reliance continues to be the flag bearer of the Fortune 500 list. And
Reliance, I remember a time not very long ago when Reliance had just toppled IOC to be number 1. And now you have LIC toppling IOC to be number 2. And Reliance is now I think held on to this position of number 1 for quite some time. Do you see this top 5?
I think the top 5 will continue to remain the same. In fact, the 6th is still one more government company, and its 7th is Tata Motors. So something drastically has to change for Tata Motors to really come up to the top 5, which could possibly happen if oil prices come off or fall down a bit more. And coming to your point on crystal gazing into FY25, I think the juice is all been taken out. I mean, commodity prices, whatever you wanted to do it, all of that softening of commodity prices has helped the numbers thus far and all kind of thing. So from here on, growth is going to be tough, and profitability, I think you will see a slight tapering. But this is the best.
So no records of that sort next year?
I really doubt whether you will see a record high growth. I mean, obviously the cumulative pool will continue to be higher. But the growth per se, you may not be a scorching growth. You might see a double-digit growth kind of slowly.
And how do you see the single-digit top-line growth this year? What is your explanation? Whereas profitability has grown to record levels,
one is clearly because the commodity prices have softened. You have already seen that numbers tapering off in the total income.
Right.
But that is also a reflective of the total demand that the country. I mean, we are seeing that there has been except for autos, where there has been some kind of double-digit demand growth. Most of the sectors are kind of I would say finding it tough to continue to grow at a faster pace than it was in the past. So you will come back to a normal single-digit growth and maybe a higher teen growth in FY25. But if there are any surprises, then the numbers might really change.
Yeah, but the going forward, this, as we are discussing, is going to be a challenging fiscal year.
This
right?
will be a challenging fiscal year. But they will be able to make it through. The only thing is that how many loss-making companies will be able to kind of bring down their losses, or you might see Vodafone continues to bleed. So that has been a big contributor to our the profit pool in terms of bringing it down, because its cumulative losses are quite high. So if you see those kind of companies continue to bleed, so you will obviously see
large companies.
Large companies. So that will kind of play some small
which sectors do you see driving FY25 top line growth as well as profitability?
It has largely been banks, oil and gas, automobiles, financial services, IT services. These are the tops. I mean, so you see the churn that keeps changing.
But these are
these are largely the guys who keep continuing to drive the profitability pool.
And also top line.
Also top line.
And the sheer size of these companies.
So the banking and financial services, oil and gas, because our Fortune 500 is a total income driven kind of an universe. So by default, you will have the PSUs.
Yeah, it is India's largest companies. That's what
by
Fortune
revenue.
500 India is
So
about.
that domination will continue.
No, and also I think we need to tell viewers and readers that other than the listing itself, which Keshav has done and the whole team has put together in terms of several stories to read in this issue, there are also a couple of very interesting stories. One is a deep dive into the plans of ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel. Now they have completed 5 years in India. They have invested humongous amounts of money and in a large growth plan. So Nevin John, who is our national corporate editor, has put together a wonderful story, a deep dive into the ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel strategy, as has Ajita Shashidhar, who has put together a wonderful story on quick commerce and how the quick commerce phenomenon, and that's something which I'm sure it will also be another story which we'll keep.
I think that's
bringing.
one thing that you touched upon is the rise of the new age companies. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's one significant change that we have seen over the past 5 years is that
Absolutely.
how new age companies like the likes of Zomato, PB,
And
Fintech
they're all coming onto the public markets now, Keshav.
So that from that angle, you might see a new cohort emerging. But how much they'll be able to move the needle in terms of profitability, that remains in question
Because of obvious reasons, because they are large and many of them are big and unicorns in terms of valuation,
Yes,
and now decacorns in many cases. But the profitability is a different ballgame,
Yes.
which we've talked about multiple
so
times.
that the old guards will continue to hold fort.
Absolutely, and they thankfully so, because that really drives the economy forward as more and more people sort of see these profits and reap the benefits of such profits from these large companies. But one more thing before we wind up, Keshav, there is also this continuing theme, and I remember from many years ago as well as in Fortune 500 India, that there is concentration at the top. The contribution of the top big companies.
Remains. That surely remains by the narrative of the big getting bigger.
Yes.
And we have already seen that post the implementation of GST and taxation, the whole concentration of, and I mean, we shouldn't really be, surprised about it, considering the fact that these are huge conglomerates, huge PSUs with strong balance sheets. Their ability to pull and invest is much higher than compared to an upcoming mid-tier company. So in that sense, the concentration, in fact, in my overview also talks about it, that the concentration of profits and total income has largely been stagnant, and the top 50 continues to dominate. You might see a bit of churn here and there, but it's the 50 who determines how the 500 numbers looks like. So that big getting bigger, you will, I think, continue to see it in the coming years.
That's an important point, because that's where the real meat in that sense of the 500 lies, the biggest companies, and there's so much, as I said, to read in this coming issue, this issue which has just hit the stands. So please go and get your copy of Fortune 500 India, India's largest companies, and this is a must read. Thank you very much for watching.